What's up, guys? Welcome to Daily Dose of Reddit. This is your host, Zach, and today's subreddit is r/MaliciousCompliance. Alright, this story's called The Not-So-Friendly Local Gaming Store. This might be a long one, so let me set the stage before I get to the good part. Actors. There's me, Dan, the stressed but good manager. At the time, juggling kids, education, and store management. Usually needed 30 hours per day to do all the things he promised he'll do. Oz, the store owner, a massive know-it-all. Background. At the time when this happened, I had been unemployed several years, so when the job center gave the go-ahead for the chance at a government-paid intern spot at the local gaming store, I jumped on it with gusto with the hopes of one day working full-time with my hobby. Act 1. First Contact. Monday morning, and I was as giddy as can be when I locked up my bike next to the gaming store. Head already filled with ideas about how this was the start of a long and glorious career working with my beloved hobby. Oz quickly greets me, dumps over onboarding responsibility to Dan, and then promptly rushes out to catch a flight to a big board game convention in Germany. After a slightly confused welcome aboard spiel from Dan, he introduces me to the back area consisting of storage, a small office, and an even smaller kitchen. After the 5-cent tour, Dan finds out that the store is out of intern shirts, and the store owner hasn't put them on back order. So I'm given a company-branded work shirt with a temporary handwritten badge that says intern pinned to the front pocket as a stopgap solution, and told what's expected of me. This included sweeping and dusting the store every morning, restock the shelves, assist customers, and if all those have been checked off, paint the store's supply of loner wargaming terrain. This will be important later on. Act 2. The troubles begin. 1 week later.
What do you think you are doing? That area is employees only.
I look up from behind the counter where he's been helping Dan tally boxes of 100+ mixed dice to see Oz march up to the counter, finger pointing square at me and looking like I just killed his pet hamster in front of him. I'm helping the manager tally these dice, so
I said employees only. You are not an employee.
Okay. Hey, Dan, can I take these boxes over to the Magic the Gathering table and tally them there?
Sure. No, you cannot. Those dice are to be kept behind the counter at all times.
Not wanting to make a fuss and maybe ruin my hopes of working with my hobby, I put the dice boxes back in order and step out from behind the counter. How about I restock the shelves with the new games we have in the back room?
The back room is employees only as well. You can't be in there without supervision.
I'm guessing you don't have time to supervise me while I get the things I need?
No, I don't. I'm meeting the guy setting up the web store, so I have better things to do than watch you haul boxes around.
Dejected, I pick up a broom and decide to sweep the floor for the 5th time that day. The web store was, according to a conversation between Oz and Dan I overheard, going to be the come-all, end-all solution that would multiply the amount of customers for the store in no time flat. Oz had hired a guy part-time to set it up recently, so I scratched his behavior up to stress and moved on with my day. Fast forward 3 days.
You can't wear that. Those shirts are for employees only. Go change right this instant.
I looked up from scrubbing off a stubborn coffee ring from one of the tables reserved for the upcoming Magic the Gathering tournament later that day and noticed that Oz was pointing at me and fuming with barely concealed anger. I was told by Dan to wear this so customers know I'm an intern.
I don't care. Those shirts are for employees only and you are not an employee. Go change.
1 quick shirt change later and I'm now using my regular short-sleeved summer shirt with no sign or branding to differentiate me from a generic customer as work shirt. What? Act 3. The end.
I've gotten a lot of complaints about you from customers lately. They say you aren't professional enough. I don't want you to handle customer service anymore.
For the record, this is complete bullcrap. I know somewhere around 80% of all the people that shop at the gaming store from a local wargaming club, and no one has said anything to me about my behavior at the store, either during or after this. Okay, so what do you want me to do instead?
I don't know. Find something to do. You know what's expected of you.
Let's see. Store is cleaned and dusted, floor swept, can't restock shelves, can't handle customer service, Can't loiter behind the counter to learn the register. What else is there? Oh, right. Painting terrain. Here's where the malicious compliance comes into play. I grab some boxes of dull, sprue gray terrain pieces and the big box of paint pots and sprays. Usually I would take about 45-ish minutes to paint each piece to what is referred to as tabletop standard. A few quick coats of paint, a slather of wash to get depth, and a quick dry brushing to pop what details there are. But this won't do it all. This store needs to have the best painted terrain it can possibly have. Paints are prepared, reference photos researched at great length, and every minuscule piece of mold line scoured away like it is an affront to nature itself. Now, just the prep work for each piece runs up to 40 minutes without even the first layer of paint having been applied yet. I carefully thin each layer of paint to nearly the consistency of pure water and apply each layer with utmost care before letting each piece dry for 20 minutes before applying the next layer of ultra-thinned paint. Every single detail on the terrain pieces are given the full competition winner treatment. This goes on for a week, customers or no customers. My day now consists of sweeping and dusting the store, then bringing out the big box of terrain and paints, paint 2 or 3 terrain pieces for 7 hours, then clock out and go home. All the while, Dan is overworked to the point of near nervous breakdown, and Oz is ranting about customers being neglected and that nothing is getting done without him. Fast forward a day or so, and by lunchtime, I've just finished up a statue terrain piece that now looks like it could step off the board by itself.
That won't do. Redo that statue. Why? It doesn't match the style of the other pieces.
You never said anything about what quality you wanted the terrain pieces painted in, so I figured I'd do my best.
I don't care. Either redo it to match the rest or get out.
This is new. Oz hasn't complained about any of the other pieces that I painted in the same style. Well, enough is enough. Instead of my usual grin and bear it stoicism, I get up, carefully put the paint pots back in order, and start putting away the terrain pieces.
What are you doing?
Putting back everything where it should be.
I told you to repaint the statue, not put everything back.
You told me to redo it or get out. I'm doing that. I quit. Fast forward to current day. Dan has quit working at the gaming store. The web store is a broken piece of crap that only barely does the minimum required, and the physical store was limping along on life support even before the pandemic hit. From what I heard from Dan last time I spoke to him, a lot of wargamers stopped coming to the store to play because they thought the majority of the old terrain pieces looked like crap and figured they could do better themselves by pooling resources and setting up a gaming club. Okay, and the whole intern thing. Closest I can relate it to in US terms. Essentially, the company agrees to give you work experience, and the government-run job center pays you a small wage instead of the business taking the financial hit. As a government-paid intern, you can only work certain hours and can't sub in for actual employees, but are usually treated as employees in all other ways. At the end of the intern period, usually 3 to 6 months, it is seen as good form that the company hires you unless you did something monumentally bad and or stupid during the intern period. That's actually pretty cool. I'm pretty sure the US has something like that. Isn't that what Job Corps is, or am I just horribly mistaken? Anyway, OP, you are a champ. Oz is a jerk, or Ounce, whatever you want to call him. He didn't appreciate you. Alright, this story's called The HR Lady Doesn't Like Me Much. So this happened at the company that I currently work for, but it was many years ago. I did not plan the outcome, just a coincidence caused by insisting on malicious compliance. I work in IT, and when I started, my job was rather entry-level, but it was paid as a salary position. After some years, the company decided to make it an hourly position, which I did not like for a variety of reasons. The company's main hourly worker pool was for manufacturing and assembly line, so the company structured its hourly policies around that position. Rigid start and end times, scheduled breaks, and sick time billed to your earned paid time off. A lot of these policies were not really compatible with my availability and the type of work that I was doing, not to mention some of the benefits changed considerably. Hourly employees were supposed to use a time clock. but those were only in buildings that had manufacturing. My manager at the time totally understood why I was disgruntled, and she came up with a few workarounds. One of which was to enter a generic 40-hour time card for me in the system every week, which was cool because it meant that I did not have to use the punch clock. If there was any overtime, she would go and fix it later. There was nothing that I could do about the change to hourly, but being me, I was pretty vocal about it, and my attitude eventually caught the attention of the HR lady. She also got wind of the whole time card deal, so that came to an end. I gave in and started using the punch clock. No more edits. At some point, my manager needed me to start the day in a different building, which had no punch clock. I don't think she was aware that there was no punch clock, so she had to make an edit to my time card for that day. Well, the HR lady saw the edit and assumed that I was still being obstinate. Out of the blue, my manager scheduled a formal type meeting with me in one of the local conference rooms. She presents a document for me to read and sign, which is a formal reprimand for not following the policy regarding the time clocks. I was instantly furious because I was following the policy, but she sent me to a site without a punch clock. She had no choice as the HR lady was the one who wrote the reprimand and told my manager to have me sign it. I read through the write-up and realized it was very poorly written, like a grade schooler had prepared it. Lots of copy and pasted text, points that did not apply to the issue at hand, and no clearly defined problem with a desired resolution and probationary period. So I refused to sign. I pointed out the many mistakes, the points that did not apply, and the lack of a resolution plan or time period. My manager agreed with me that the reprimand was bullcrap, but the HR lady wanted to go down this path. I thought, well, then we were gonna do it right and I was gonna make her work for it. I demanded a rewritten form with a clearly stated problem, a desired resolution, and a time frame for when the matter would be considered resolved. My manager said, "The HR lady is not gonna like that. She's gonna want to talk to you directly." I said, "Good. I will gladly tell her that to her face." We scheduled a meeting. I explained to the HR lady that the reprimand process was an opportunity to not only point out mistakes, but also to correct them. The lack of an improvement plan in this write-up meant it could not meet those requirements. Begrudgingly, the HR lady accepted my complaints and agreed to redo the write-up. To my surprise, I never heard from her again about this issue. I'd kind of forgotten about the whole thing until they did some restructuring in IT, which made me realize I didn't want that hanging over my head unresolved. I decided to formally request a copy of my file from HR, and to my surprise, the reprimand was not in it. I emailed the HR lady asking about this, and she explained that she rescinded it, so it's gone. I was a little confused that she hadn't mentioned this in the months that had passed, but was glad it was over. Sometime later, I was having lunch with my director, and he brought up the reprimand. He was asking, "Whatever happened with that?" And I told him HR rescinded it. Apparently, HR cannot close a reprimand without the employee's leadership signing off on it, which was about 4 different people. Not a single one would agree to it. It turns out that my malicious compliance with the reprimand process forced her to write a detailed, intelligible reprimand, including an improvement plan. All the extra detail she had to add made it clear to everyone that it was bullcrap and she couldn't add it to my file. Ew. I'm so glad I've never had to deal with those, like, physical time clock punch card thingamabobs. When I was at the hotel or whatever, we used, like, the software on a computer, and it still sucks sometimes, but it was really easy to, like, edit and all that jazz, so yeah. Alright, this story's called, "Want Me to Pay for the Internet? Sure thing." This happened a few years ago when I still lived with my parents and paid keep. I work in IT and love gaming and all things tech, so I'm a very heavy user of the internet. Where I live, a single company owns all of the copper cables for the internet, and they charge a fortune for a terrible service with no incentive to make it any better. We were on their 40 megabits a second package, but frequently got around 8 megabits a second speeds, with latency often going into triple figures. Not ideal for gaming or streaming. A new ISP, or internet service provider, relocated here, and started offering better speeds and undercutting the existing crappy ISP. They retaliated by offering a new 80 megabits a second package, while the new ISP could only provide 40. And it was surprisingly £5 cheaper than their existing 40 megabits per second package we were on. Obviously, this is a no-brainer to switch to, as it's not only cheaper, but also faster. I went to my parents and asked if we could upgrade our internet package, but they aren't heavy users and were fed up with my complaining, and told me that if I wanted it, I had to pay the difference for it. My keep was being paid directly into their bank on a standing order, so I simply took this from the nice round figure of $300 and dropped it down to $295. Several months went by without anybody saying anything, so I figured they didn't care. Eventually, my dad brought it up because he's very tight when it comes to spending money, and I said word for word what they had told me and that they didn't give me time to explain. Not particularly malicious, and they were a bit annoyed at first, but saw the funny side later that evening. I put the keep back to $300 and bought takeout that week to make up for lost earnings. Dude, that's what I'm saying. Competition between businesses is only ever good for the consumer, because you get stuff like this. That's badass. Good job, OP. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.